try and share my screen with you all. Give me one moment. There we go. So welcome, thank you for inviting me to come along. My name's Gina Rowland, this is Gina Rowlands, and I'm going to be talking to you all today about promoting positive behaviour. I'm a Vice Principal Pastoral, so pastoral is where my heart is, but it sits very much alongside academic. The two go hand in hand. And my roots are, I'm an MFL teacher, so I teach French, Spanish and EAL. And should you have any questions post this presentation, my email address is on this slideshow, and these slides will be shared with you all through the British Institute of Teaching Facebook page. So should you want to follow up afterwards, you can do. So high quality behaviour for learning is underpinned by relationships, by lesson planning and positive reinforcement and rewards. And it's important that within your own school you have a clear behaviour policy that everybody understands, and importantly that everybody follows. And it needs to work alongside a system that records and tracks not just negative but also positive behaviour. How can we promote positive behaviour? Now, our vision is to ensure that all students can begin to learn to self-regulate. Now, self-regulation is a critical competency that underlies the mindful, intentional and thoughtful behaviour of our learners. And the term self-regulation refers to the capacity to control your own impulses, both to stop doing something, even if you don't want to, or indeed to start doing something again, even if you don't really want to. And self-regulation should not, however, be confused with obedience, with discipline, compliance, because when learners are truly self-regulated, they behave the same way even when there aren't any adults watching. So this is what we're aiming for in our students. But how do we teach our students to self-regulate? Now, I'm going to share an analogy with you. Bear with me, because it will make sense the more I go through it. So fleas are remarkable creatures. They can jump between 1.5 and, they are usually between 1.5 and 3 millimeters long. So they're tiny, but they can jump 33 centimeters horizontally and 18 centimeters straight up into the air. So if a flea was a person, this would be the equivalent of jumping straight up the clock face of Big Ben in London, or clean from one end of the football stadium to the other. What's even more remarkable about the flea, though, is that this quite extraordinary physical ability can be limited by one really small intervention. If you place fleas in a jar with a lid on for just 3 days, they will only jump half the height that they are capable of. In that time, they will learn that this is only how high they can jump. And even if you take the lid off the jar, that's the height that they will jump until the day they die, even though physically they're capable of jumping much higher. Now, of course, none of us wish to limit our own students' potential, but for our students to self-regulate, we want to modify certain aspects of their behaviour in order for students to adjust their own boundaries. Now, the Pygmalion effect, which is a play based by George Bernard Shaw, was seen in the play My Fair Lady, in which a professor of phonetics, Henry Higgins, makes a bet that he can train a common flower girl, the lady you can see on the screen at the moment, called Eliza Doolittle, to pass for royalty at an ambassador's garden party by simply teaching her how to behave like royalty. Now, Dr. Robert Rosenthal, the guy you can see on the screen at the moment, the top right-hand side, undertook the Pygmalion effect study as to how students are transformed or indeed limited by expectations. Now, the Pygmalion effect, or the Rosenthal effect, is a phenomenon in which the greater the expectation placed upon people, be this by the students' perceptions of themselves, whether it be the family at home or indeed via the classroom teacher, the better they perform. However, also notably is something called the Gollum effect, in which low expectations lead to a decrease in performance. So it's not rocket science at the moment. These are all things that we probably already all know. We all know that the fundamental difference to a student's ability at school and indeed their general well-being is from the support of a really, really good teacher. I'm sure we can all reflect back on our days at school and we remember the teachers that had the biggest impact upon our future, our learning, our love of learning, and all that came from that. And the important element here is really setting the bar high. I want my students to exceed my expectations. As with most teachers, I feel like I've let my students down if I don't manage to get a piece of work back to them that I promised I'd mark by that day, or if I fail to follow up with a piece of praise or correction, or maybe I haven't quite hit the teaching point that I was trying to deliver. But we are all human. We are all human, and that happens sometimes, but reflective practice is really key here. It's okay to take risks with teaching sometimes, and because at the heart of it, that's how we all improve, because we all want to improve. And students generally are pretty supportive creatures. However, fundamentally, high expectations is what informs your planning at the beginning, your delivery, and therefore the student outcomes. So set the benchmark really high and do everything that you can to reach it. It's important to set the standard high. We might not reach it, but if we aim high, that's where we'll be going for. We mustn't waver on that expectation. I'm a really, really big fan of the no excuses philosophy, and it's something I challenge myself to live up to. I don't always succeed, but I aim. The no excuses philosophy can be a superb mantra for raising your own and students' expectations of performance in the classroom. So even if they've had a very busy morning with some, I don't know, maybe some music exams or whatever it may be, we can be understanding of that, but we have to ensure that we have our expectations set high. Something else that helps with promoting positive behaviour in the classroom is consistent, calm adult behaviour. Now, this again sounds something that's really obvious. We're all really, really good at this at the start of the academic year when we're all raring to go. But we're human, we get tired, things might happen in our personal lives. And it's at this point that we need to be the best actors and the best actresses, because the students deserve us to be on our very best performance at all points. The students shouldn't see a change in our approach on day 1 or day 300 at the end of the academic year. And this is where we should reach out and have colleagues standing alongside us. So if we're finding things very tough, we can ask for support and help from our colleagues, or indeed they can support us. But please note that I do say stand alongside. It's really important that if you do have any incidences of poor behaviour in your classroom, that you don't pass this over to somebody else to deal with. Restorative conversations where something has gone wrong in the classroom need to be with you, the person where that has gone wrong with. And if things go really, really wrong, and maybe you or the student are not in a position, we're not resilient enough at that moment in time to be able to have that conversation, a cooling off period is absolutely fine. But a cooling off period should be just that. Cooling off until emotions are back in check by all, so that that reflective conversation can be had. And if you do see poor behaviour, please don't ignore it, because kids do notice. And if they see you ignoring poor behaviour, they're adjusting in their mind where they see your expectations and your standards are. So it's important that you don't let things slip. And if you see a colleague finding a situation tough, stand alongside them and support them to manage the situation. First, attention to the best conduct. Now, this is something that took me quite a while in my early teaching career to come to grips with. You can thank the kids that are meeting your expectations. Thank you for opening your books up and purple penning the feedback. Okay, so without drawing attention to the kids who maybe haven't got their books out and are not reading through the comments that you've written in their exercise books, where you're asking them, how did you work out this? Or please, can you go back and correct that? They're just sitting there. So by thanking, by drawing attention to the people that are meeting your expectations, I'm naturally going to pull on those other people who are not doing that. They'll go, oh, okay, right, book's out, I need to get on with that. And give praise to those who do go above your expectation, because this models what outstanding is for you and subconsciously allows others to aim for this. How great does it feel to tag a name on the board for excellent contributions? When I first started my teaching many years ago now, it was practice, unfortunately at the time, if a student was behaving poorly, to write their name on the board. And if they got their name on the board 3 times, then that would lead to detention or whatever it may be that was in your behaviour policy in your school. But this was something that was flagged to me a few years ago, and it was like, but so obvious at the same time. So I actually don't tag people's names on the board if they've got poor behaviour. I do deal with it according to our policy, and I do log it and record it so that we can follow that up if need be. But anybody that gives excellent contributions, I put their name on the board and I award them the positive awards that they deserve according to our behaviour policies. So houseboat, for example. And by just flipping that slightly, all the students want to have their name on the board. The kids can get competitive and they don't care if they're being tagged on the board for poor behaviour or excellent contributions. So let's have that flipped so that we can have them vying to have their name on the board for the excellent contributions. But do make sure that you're not giving any empty praise, because kids are not stupid and they really do know whether they have gone above their own expectations, their own ability level, or whether it was a pretty standard response. So make sure you're not empty praising. And don't ignore behaviour that doesn't meet the expectations. You can tackle it directly or indirectly, but always ensure that those that are meeting or exceeding expectations get recognised. Consistency. Now, kids love consistency, they love routines, and they love boundaries. They may not recognise it, they may not think they do, but they do. And what is acceptable today, is it always acceptable? What is not acceptable, was this always the case? Does it matter which student is doing it? Because actually, it shouldn't matter how your day is going, how tired you are, how many reports may be waiting to be written. Your expectations should always be your expectations of everybody within the class. I get students come to my office sometimes who maybe haven't met expectations, and the ones who complain the most are the ones that sense a real sense of injustice. And mostly this is where they haven't in the moment been able to perhaps truly be reflective of what was happening and recognise their own behaviours that led to the final straw. However, if we can be consistent with our expectations and our standards, then this really does support these reflective conversations, or even better, perhaps ensure we don't get there at all. But how can we individually get students to be self-regulators at all times? Well, I haven't fully mastered this. If I had, I'd be a genius. But I racked my brains and I thought about the sorts of things that I do. I spoke to colleagues about what they do. And I came up with this list of suggestions that I would share with you today. So make your expectations known. That's a given. Kids need to know where they stand, what's expected from the piece of homework that you're setting them. You know, do they just need to write a paragraph, or actually is this something that you're expecting to be deeper learning? They need to know what your expectations are so that they can try and meet those expectations, or hopefully even exceed them. Give honest feedback. It's amazing how perceptive kids can't be actually at times, and sometimes we might think that something's really obvious, but kids don't always see it. So you need to give them really honest feedback, and there's nothing wrong with giving honest feedback to students or to staff, because this helps them become better in themselves. They can improve upon themselves, but if they don't know, they can't do that. Do it in a discreet and in a way that gives the person dignity, of course, but give them honest feedback. Make sure you offer a choice. Now, this sounds a strange one, and I don't mean do work or don't do work, obviously, but if I have a student perhaps who in my classroom I don't think is sitting next to the right person. They're not working, they're not meeting my expectations, either in their behaviour or their work outcomes in the classroom. I might say to them, right, I don't think actually that seat right now is the best place for you to be able to produce the best work for you. So you're going to move now, and you can choose. You can either go and sit next to Bob, or you can go and sit next to Tom. But right now, I need you to pick your things up. You can choose which one you think you're going to work better in, because I know you can do better than this. And then at that point, I'm going to switch my attention back to the teaching. So the rest of the class aren't losing out on their teaching time, and that student doesn't feel like everybody's sort of focusing on them, which is going to sort of boil up their own emotions and maybe lead to them making a wrong decision. So the heat is taken off them. Hopefully they're going to make the right choice, they're going to pick their things up, they're going to move, and because you've given them that choice and you've framed it in a slightly positive way, they're going to continue engaging with your work and hopefully do some really fantastic work as well. Be patient. Be patient, then be patient again. So with young people, you need to take a deep breath, and you need to think of another way. Maybe if they're not understanding what you're saying, they're not getting the teaching element that you're delivering, be patient, take a breath, think of a different way, ask a student to explain, because sometimes kids can explain it in a different way that students can access. But be patient with young people. Don't tell them what to do, let them decide. And again, that's very similar to the previous one about offering choice. So I might say, okay, my expectation is that you're going to have written 2 paragraphs on your last holidays, including a variety of different activities in a past tense, with a range of connectives, with a range of opinions, justifying those opinions, and going to tell me about your ideal holidays in the future. I might set them. I say to him, you know what is expected of you. At the moment, you're not meeting my expectations. It's up to you. But you know what will happen if you don't meet my expectations. We're going to have to sit here at break time, and we're going to do it. That's up to you. And I'm going to walk away. Help them understand their cues. Now, I think when I really truly know my students, I can often see and sense when things are starting to go wrong at an early point, and often you can just nip it in the bud at that point, and you can pull it back at that point, so that there is no bad behaviour, there is no poor behaviour, there is no not engaging excellently with the work. And if you've planned a really good lesson, they're all engaged all the time, they're making good progress, and they haven't got the time to do anything that's going to be not fully engaging with work anyway. But kids are kids, and sometimes you can recognise little telltale signs that they're starting to get a bit and that might be the point where you say, okay, thank you, Tom, I want you just to go and hand these worksheets out, just by allowing them to move for a moment, get rid of that extra little bit of energy. You might be helping them out, and actually you're helping the whole class out as well. So understand their cues. That comes from knowing your students, and allow for small mistakes. Okay, they're young people. That's how we all learn. We learn from our mistakes, but allow that to happen. Relationships. Now, this is the most important element, other than well-planned lessons, for me in promoting positive behaviour. So those connections that we make with kids, they stand us in really, really good stead. They want to work for you. They want to meet your expectations. They want to be praised. So take a moment to sidle up to somebody at break time or lunchtime and just ask them how their day is going, or maybe what they got up to at the weekend, and just ask them how they are. And the key here is to remember that conversation, follow up a few days later. You might act a bit surprised at why you're chatting to them, and they might even have the "go away, I'm with my friend's" face. But really, you're making them feel valued. And as long as they sense it's a genuine interest and you are truly listening, but truly listening to what they're saying, not half listening and thinking about whether you've got your PowerPoint ready for your next lesson, but truly listening, they'll feel valued. And the students that you find the most challenging, they're the ones that you need to work hardest with at building up a positive relationship. I was talking to Jen Stimpson, who's talking after me in a moment on this webinar, about my topic that I'm talking about, and she shared with me her A-grade desk. So she has the desk right in front of her, and she calls it the A grade desk. Now, normally you put students there who need that extra intervention, extra support, but she calls it the A grade desk, and she persuades them that they're not there for being poor students, but they're lucky. They're the ones that got the lucky straw because they sit the closest and they get those little extra nuggets of information that are going to help them achieve their A grade. And she actually has students arguing over who's going to sit on the A grade desk. So there are all these different things that you can do, but at the end of the day, every child needs a champion. So go champion your students because they need this. I do have, I'm not going to show it now, but on the final slide, I have an inspirational speaker called Rita Pearson, who's talking about every kid needs a champion. As I said, I will share these PowerPoint slides with you all through the Facebook page, and I encourage you to go and watch that, because I think that kind of sums up a lot of what I've been talking about today in terms of high standards of all expected from all, positive relationships, and making sure that everybody understands what is expected of them, and being consistent about that approach. I think that's it from me. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be delighted to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Gina, thank you so much. A lot of useful information, not just for people in Sri Lanka, but I think for me as a teacher here as well. And I've been teaching for a good 10 years now. It's still a lot of things to take on board and just to try those things out. I'm getting a bit of feedback. Let me just mute everyone. And with the experiment that you said, I'm going to post it here. The fly experiment, I've seen that before as well, and it was just amazing to see how those flies don't come out of the jar. So do have a look at that. And I've seen the speaker at the end as well. It's just phenomenal and very, very inspiring. A lot to take in. I'm definitely going to look back at this recording just to write those things down, because I haven't been writing them down, but I will look at that. So that's been really useful. If anyone has any questions, like I said before, please write them here so I can ask the speakers on your behalf, or feel free to give me a thumbs up or a reaction so I can unmute you. Right, super. That probably just means that it was very clear. So thank you so much. I can see some applause as well. Let me just